Hey, family. Another day to get better. So, going through the material here that I've been presenting for my content. And as I've stated from the beginning of these videos, basically, I got a bunch of material here that I got from the challenge incarceration program that I was in. And I've just been kind of going through it in no particular order. So, I had grabbed a stack of stuff out of one of these folders, threw it here on the table, and I've been just going through it to expose you to the information that I was exposed to that over time had in some shape or form changed the way I saw things, changed the way I thought about things, and just kind of changed the way I acted. And came across it's 8-page article here. And so during my active drinking and active drug use days, I broke the law and committed some crimes and got convicted and sentenced, and people called me a criminal. But when I think about it, it's like, I know deep down in my heart I'm not some bad person, a criminal, and so I've thought that numerous times. And then I just came across this article, and it's called "The Basic Myths About Criminals." And I'm going to read this for you guys today. It might be broken down into a couple or 3 videos just because it's so long, but I'm going to read it. And I started to read it a little bit and thumb through it, and I thought it was pretty interesting, at least from my point of view. So yeah, I'm going to get into this. But yeah, I hope everybody's doing okay. Hope you guys are getting some breakthroughs there, implementing some of this information, some of these techniques and skills or whatnot, and that it's had some sort of positive impact in your life. It's not easy to change. You got to have motivation to change, a reason, and it's usually because something bad happens, but we don't have to wait for something bad to happen in order to make a positive change in life. We can change anything we want to about our lives at any point in time. Um, that if you're happy with your life and you don't want to change anything about it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. But if you do, you think that you're in your current circumstance disgusts you and you want to make a decision to change, then that's okay too. Keep coming back. Hopefully some of this information, evidently the Department of Corrections and the treatment programs thought it was helpful to help somebody change, so who am I to say it's not? All right, got those cleaned up. Now I can see a little better. Here we go. So I'm going to start reading this here. It's called The Basic Myths of Criminals. So in the 1957 musical West Side Story, Stephen Sondheim duplicated what then was the current thinking about juvenile delinquency. Delinquents were punks because their fathers were drunks. They were misunderstood rather than no good. They were suffering from a social disease, and society had played them a terrible trick, it says. They needed an analyst, not a judge, because it was just their neurosis acting up. In short, their criminal behavior was regarded as symptomatic of a deep-seated psychological or sociological problem. Little has changed since then in terms of deeply ingrained beliefs about the causes of crime. It says, in this chapter, I shall briefly discuss these beliefs. In subsequent chapters, I shall examine them in greater detail and show that the prevalent thinking about crime has been and still is loaded with fundamental misconceptions resulting in devastating consequences for society. When a person commits a particularly sordid crime, his sanity may be questioned. 3 men pick up 2 girls who are thumbing a lift. A joyride turns into a nightmare when the teenagers are driven to a desolate, mountainous area where they are bound and repeatedly raped. 2 of their tormentors dig a hole and then tell them to say their prayers. However, the men decide to prolong the torture and sprint the girls off to an apartment and brutalize them again. The girls are saved by a suspicious neighbor who calls the police. Eventually, the court considers the rapists to be mentally disordered sex offenders and sends them to a psychiatric hospital, where they spend less than 1/3 of the time they would have served in prison. Criminals learn to fool the psychiatrists and the courts in order to serve easy time in a hospital with the prospect of getting out more quickly than they would from a prison. From other criminals and from their attorneys, even unsophisticated street criminals learn to ploy of insanity. The game is for the criminal to convince others that he is sick so that he can beat the charge. After he is admitted to the hospital, he plays the psychiatric game of mouthing insights and behaving properly so that he can convince the staff that he is recovering and deserves to be released. We, the public, may be so revolted by the gruesomeness of a crime that we conclude that only a sick person would be capable of such an act. But our personal reaction is totally irrelevant to understanding the criminal. True, what these men did to the teenagers is not a normal everyday event, but the key question is, what are these men really like? A detailed and lengthy examination of the mind of a criminal, which is seldom made, will reveal that it is anything but sick. The criminal is rational, calculating, and deliberate in his actions. Criminals know right from wrong. In fact, somehow the law is better than some know the laws better than their lawyers, but they believe that whatever they want to do at any given time is right for them. Their crimes require logic and self-control. A person may steal so often that others are certain that he is the victim of an irresistible impulse and therefore a kleptomaniac. But a thorough mental examination would show that he is simply a habitual thief, good at what he does. He can size up a situation at a glance and then make off with whatever he wants and then make off with whatever he wants. Repeat that twice. A habit is not a compulsion. On any occasion, the thief can refrain from stealing if he is in danger of getting caught. And if he decides to give up stealing for a while and lie low, he will succeed in doing so. The sudden and violent crime of passion has been considered a case of temporary insanity because the perpetrator acts totally out of character. But again, appearance belies reality. A man murders his wife in the heat of an argument. He has not murdered anyone before, and statistical trends would project that he will not murder again. It is true that the date, time, and place of the homicide were not planned, but an examination of this man would show that on several occasions he had shoved her and often wished her dead. In addition, he is a person who frequently had fantasies of evening the score violently whenever he believed that anyone had crossed him. He did not act totally out of character when he murdered his wife. He was not seized by uncontrollable impulse. In his thinking, there were precedent for such a crime, a precedent for such a crime. A person with even worse problems might well have resolved them differently. Criminals are not mentally ill. Aren't they nevertheless victims of poverty, broken homes, racism, and a society that denies them opportunities? Since the late 19th century, there has been a prevalent opinion that society is more to blame for crime than the criminal. Sociologists assert that the inner city youngster responds with rage to a society that has excluded him from the mainstream and made the American dream beyond his reach. Some even contend that crime is a normal and adaptive response to growing up in the soul-searing conditions of places like Watts and the South Bronx. They observe that in correctional institutions there is a disproportionately large number of inmates who are poor and from minority groups. These inmates are seen as casualties of a society that has robbed them of hope and virtually forced them into crime just so they can survive. Crime knows no social boundaries. As the rising suburban crime rate demonstrates, suburban delinquents are also regarded as victims of intense pressures to compete, of materialism, of parents who neglect them, push them to grow up too fast, or are overly protective. These adolescents are perceived as rebelling not only against their parents, but against middle-class values, seeking meaning instead through kicks and thrills. Peer pressure is seen as a critical factor in the lives of youngsters from all social classes who turn to crime. Excuse me. We got coming down with the cold. It's been raining and stuff outside. Experts point out that among some subcultures, the rewards are for being daring and tough, not for good grades and job promotions. Kids learn about crime from one another. They are schooled in the streets and go along with the crowd in order to acquire self-esteem and sense of belonging. The belief that crime is contagious like a disease is more than a century old. Every social institution has been blamed for contributing to crime. Schools have been singled out as forcing into crime youngsters who don't fit the academic mold. Churches have been accused of not providing leadership to wayward youth and to the community at large. Newspapers, television, and the movies have been charged with glamorizing crime. American business and advertising have been accused of contributing to distorted values and therefore to crime. Economic hard times have been associated with an increase in crime, but then so have good times. Financial pressures are said to push despondent people over the edge. But then, when times are booming, it has been thought that the gap between the haves and have-nots widens and the latter, out of resentment, turn to crime. Economic troubles are often seen as contributing to crime by forcing mothers to go to work, further weakening the family. their children have less supervision and guidance than before and are even more vulnerable to peer pressure. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in this. I think I'll, so that was 1, 2. Yeah. So that's 2.5 pages of this already. I'm going to get back to the rest of this in another video. Mark that there. But yeah, so this is, it was called The Basic Myths About Criminals. And that's a lot to think about right there. I don't even really read this stuff before I read it out and do a video on it. And to tell you the truth, I don't even remember reading this in the group, in treatment. Must have been just part of a handout that we never got to or something. Maybe they told us to read it on our own time. But anyway, where did I just left off at? The children have less supervision and guidance than before and are even more vulnerable to peer pressure. All right. Yeah, I'll pick up on this in a second video. Shit, there was a lot going on in there, man. I don't consider myself as being a criminal. I may have made some mistakes and broken some laws, man, but the crazy shit they're talking about in that. I mean, I can see where they're coming from about, you know, yeah, you grow up in poverty, you grow up in neighborhoods of poverty, you're gonna have some but yeah, I'm gonna think about this thing. I'm gonna read the rest of this tonight and ponder some of this before I read it again. But thanks for watching. I got one more thing to do, and that is the nightly journal entries from when I was in prison. Let's see where I was at. I believe it's November 2nd. Yep, November 2nd of 2011. What was positive and what was negative about today? The positive part of my day was once again work crew because I did something that was constructive for a positive purpose. For me, the only negative to the day was after work. I came to prison rather than going home to my loved ones and family. What were the main feelings I experienced today? All in all, I can't say I paid much attention to how I was feeling. A main feeling I was in. Oh, okay. It says, all in all, I can't say I paid much attention to how I was feeling. A main feeling. I was in a positive mood today and I focused on doing what I did to the best of my ability. What helped me make it through the day? The direction and the structure of CIP, Challenge Incarceration Program. What did I learn today? I learned that my thinking error is a situation yesterday. In a situation yesterday was that I zero stated for a bit. So there's a thinking error that's called zero stating, zero state of mind. Shit, well, Yeah, I guess I'll go through that in a video too. But learning to live with emotions is something that was in my journal too, and it's dated November 2nd of 2011. I just don't want the videos to get too long and stuff, so I'll put this in another video. But it's learning to live with emotions, and it's just got 15 questions that I had to answer as the front of it. So I had to answer that, and I had to answer that. So we will go through that just to participate in what I'm doing here. This is my recovery. So keep pushing forward. Never give up, guys. Just because we've been a certain way so long does not mean we have to continue to be that way. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, you guys keep pushing forward. Thanks.